Okay. Welcome back, everyone, and viewing audience. We'll continue with the presentation. Mr. Ferrero. Oh, sorry, Jonathan.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I'll just pick up where I left off, which was our 2022 goals. The first goal listed is the asset management infrastructure information. This actually started in 2021 with the finance department. They're leading that initiative, but we've been working with them to supply them information on our infrastructure systems, filling in data gaps, getting condition ratings on different infrastructure, kind of pulling some stuff that's in the back of our heads and trying to put it into the system. So we've been starting that, and that will continue into 2022. The Malden Road detailed design, as I was talking about from the 2021 goals, will continue the detailed design. Hopefully we can get into a position where we know what kind of property we will have to start getting, and potentially even utility relocation. The Parks Master Plan, this will be done in coordination with a few other departments, the Strategy and Engagement, Culture and Rec, the CAO's office. And then to continue with the Front Road Storm EA, the DMAF grant, we'll continue through that environmental assessment and allow that engineering and consulting work to continue on. As council may recall, it's over an 8-year, that grant is over an 8-year time period, so that'll be ongoing for some time. And the last one here is to develop a street tree request policy, which will build off of our street tree maintenance policy that we just completed. And we'll be bringing that to council in 2022. And I'll get into some of our operating budgets. I'll just note or just point out there, as some of the other operating budgets we've seen, there's inflationary changes on each one. I won't, and the finance department has gone over those some of those inflationary issues. I won't speak to each one. And if you have any questions, we can clarify. And then I'll highlight a couple things in each area as we move through them. In the Parks department, I'll highlight something that's been a really positive thing, I think, in everyone's mind, the holiday lights. So our parks team, led by Mr. Bryden, was really the leaders in getting that all set up. There was with assistance from roads as well, and they did a great job setting that up. We didn't know how long it would take. We were not nervous at times, but sometimes waiting for some of the stuff to come in, but they did it in really good time, and it looks great. So that was a really positive thing. In the fleet area, we continue to do our regular maintenance. We've also done a updated scheduling kind of technique. Now we're using our new work order system to do that, and that's been proving beneficial to all areas that get maintenance done by the mechanics. In the facilities and maintenance area, although the closure of the Vollmer isn't good, the FOs and the maintenance team were able to take advantage of that and do a number of things in there that might not have normally been able to get to. So a lot of painting, fixing, maintenance things, and deep cleaning. So they really did a lot of work in that time. In the roads area, we do have a service level change, and this is the $10,000 to allow us to implement the alternating no parking policy. So that was discussed last night at council. So again, we'll be putting a bit of a procedure together, bringing that to council early in 2022, and this kind of gives us that budget to work with getting those signs and putting up the ones we can. I will note here that there is a large inflationary decrease on this one, and some of that has to do with the new street sweeper that I'll be talking about in a minute in Capital. But I think that's where some of some of that savings might be shown. But I'll get to the street sweeper soon. In storm sewers, we've asked for an increase in this budget for storm sewer repair maintenance by 40,000. So in 2021, it was 20,000, and there's only a limited number of things you can do on storm sewers with $20,000. As soon as you start digging in it in any kind of location or buying any sort of pipe and stone, it really adds up quickly. So we're somewhat limited in what we can go fix on our older storm sewers. So 40,000 an additional 40,000 will help us do a bit more and make sure we take care of the ones that are immediate, need immediate attention. It may, in future years, I'm sure that request will continue to go up, but for now, that's what we've asked for, and we'll make that work in 2022. On the wastewater slide, you'll see 2 revenue increases, and that's a result of the rate increases, which was discussed earlier by the finance department. And then we get into the capital enhancements. So I'll go through each one of these. And again, if you have any questions, I can't see everyone on the screen, so maybe just let me know. So the Malden Road detail design, as discussed, will continue into 2022. There was money budgeted for previous years, so that was carried over, and then there's been additional money kind of added to this line item to get up to 2.5 million. And again, that's for potential utility relocation and maybe even into property acquisition. And look forward to hearing Mr. Morrow's presentation tomorrow, which we'll go into more detail. The Turkey Bridge over Matchett Road detailed design. This had been in the budget before. We kind of put the detailed design on hold for a bit. We wanted to get through the Turkey Creek H&H study. Just not that we think there's any issues, but since we're doing that study, we thought, well, let's just hold off a little bit on the detailed design and just to make sure there's no conflict with the bottom side of that bridge and water levels. So I anticipate that we'll see in 2022 that there are no issues and we can continue on with that design and hopefully in 2023 budget for rehabilitation on that bridge. The Holiday Light expansion, this would be phase 5 of 10. This is to continue to add streetlight poles and decorations on streetlight poles and lights on trees. This, the way I understand it, is separate from the work or the items in the Civic Center display. So this has been ongoing and will continue to be ongoing, but if council agrees. The Volmer tennis courts, as council knows, this was tendered in 2021 and was over budget. We're carrying this again in 2022's budget, and I'm hopeful that we'll have more competitive bidding and more contractors bidding the work, which will hopefully be better prices than what we saw last time. I think having it at the end of the year and everyone was quite busy kind of was the reason we got, I think it was only one bidder, if I remember correctly, or 2 maybe. So having it go out early in the year, hopefully that helps us with that project. And part of the cost or part of the funding of that is granted, I believe. The Volmer pump room sink. We've identified a need for kind of a janitor sink in the pump room just to help with operations that the FOs undertake in that room. The next one, the street sweeper. This is a bigger ticket item. Spend a couple more minutes on. So this is a new piece of equipment used to clean streets, parking lots, clean catch basins, and it can also do other kind of low to medium size hydro excavations, which we would be beneficial to have that piece of equipment kind of on hand for our crews to use. Right now, we contract out street sweeping, and basically the contractor does 2 laps of the town, more or less, in a year, plus a few other maybe times we call them out here and there. But by having it ourselves, we'd be able to, I think, have a bit more flexibility over when and where we go, and kind of do a bit of a better job. We could also use it for the the more frequent events that we're holding in parking lots and things like that. So just from an operational standpoint, there'd be some benefits there. And then from a budgetary standpoint, what we'd be doing is eliminating that line item in the operating budget. I think it's $73,000 street sweeping line item. And we'd also be able to reduce the catch basin cleaning item by $20,000. So those would be subtractions from the budget. And then we would have to add in some operating expense in the fleet area of $13,000, and that's basically the average annual maintenance costs that these machines carry with them. Our road superintendent, Andy Coghill, has experience with maintaining these machines and running these machines, so he has a lot of experience with them. And we did check around other municipalities, and this seems to be pretty much the norm for maintenance costs on it. So overall, if you kind of look at the lifespan of the machine with those maintenance costs and capital costs, it's about a savings of $30,000 a year. So for all those reasons, I think it would be a benefit to have that machine. And move on to the snow plow attachment. This is a snow blade for the backhoe. We do have one of these for the loader, and it basically makes snow removal much more efficient when we do send those pieces out to push snow on heavy snow events. It's much better than just having the regular bucket on it. The whole hot mix cold patch trailer. So what this is basically a warm trailer that we use for pothole patching, cold patching. What it does, it makes the cold patch more pliable. It makes it easier to work with. Makes the job a lot quicker. And I think the biggest benefit is from the fact that it's more pliable and easy to work with. So from a health and safety side, it has a benefit in kind of reduced injuries from that aspect. The cold patch, and especially in the winter, is pretty hard and difficult to work with. So this would make pothole patching go a lot faster and a lot easier on the staff. The sign roll-off bed. So this is kind of an additional piece to our existing roll-off truck. This item would be outfitted with our sign equipment, and it's part of an overall plan to try to make our fleet a bit more flexible. Instead of having to maybe buy specific trucks for specific things, we can get these roll-off attachments and have them outfitted for whatever we're needing, and just use the one truck to do different things, different tasks. The grading shoulder reclaimer, it goes on the back of the grader, and what it does is it kind of pulls up stone that's kind of been pushed down to the side of the shoulder and even into the bank of the ditch a little maybe. It kind of pulls it up and turns it and discs it up and windrows it up at the top of the shoulder, and then it can be graded out again. So over time, it does save on quite a bit of stone. The field sweeper for the parks area, so that it's basically what it self-explanatory almost, but it just picks up the grass clippings on the fields, and I think primarily used after heavy grass cutting. So if it's a thick grass and lots of clippings left over, we'd be able to get rid of those, and it just leads to improved usability and playability of the fields. The Normandy Sidewalk between Ellis and Sovereign. So this was a report that was presented to council by Mr. Mara in 2021. He detailed kind of the various sections of Normandy Sidewalk that where they would be and how much each section would cost. This section in particular was kind of identified and recommended to go in, but deferred until 2022 pending budget approval. So we have put it in the budget here to do that work in the spring of 2022. If it's approved, we would start our design, start the tendering process. Once we had a contractor, we would provide notice to those homeowners affected. What we would do is we would leave adequate time to between giving the notification and starting the work, because we would anticipate getting feedback from those residents. So we'll allow some time in there to hopefully work through those items and as best we can, and with the goal of getting the sidewalk in. And then the last one is the portable diesel generator. This is primarily for our storm pump stations, emergency backup power for our storm pump stations, so we could trailer it around to the few that we have storm pumps at in the case of a power outage. It would also work on our sanitary pump stations, but we do have, I think, a generator, an aqua hazard generator for sanitary, where we need them, but it would work if needed at those facilities as well. So I think that covers the capital enhancements, and thank you very much, and I'm available for any questions.
Councillor Dicho Spagnolo, and then Councillor Reno.
Thank you. Through you to Mr. Osborne. I just have a question for the tennis courts at 850,000. Can you remind me how much the COVID grant was that's going to be allocated towards that $850,000 amount?
I believe it was 313,000, but maybe Tono could verify if I'm wrong on that one. Something to that effect.
Sure. Mayor, members of council, that is correct. It's 313,000 is the grant that was allocated to that project.
Okay. Thank you both.
Councillor Reno.
Thank you. Tano, to that same point, I'm just wondering, that 313, was that absorbed into the budget somewhere else to offset this?
So yes, the plan funding would be from that would make up part of the funding for that. So there is incorporated in the overall budget, and the current rates are ahead in front of you. So there'll be no effects from that grant. So basically, it's part of the 1.75% tax rate increase, and the funding for that project would come from that grant and our reserves.
Okay, thank you. So the 850 is not all coming from reserves. That is that's part of that is the entire cost, and the other 313 goes towards it. So we're looking at about 500 from capital.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. And just one confirmation, the street sweeper. So I had questions, I was writing them all down, and Darnell Jonathan just started answering them all in his presentation. So really, I guess my only question is, it looks like it was a $73,000 hit to the operational budget every single year, and now that's going to be reduced down to about 13,000, correct?
In a way, it's almost, it's about a $30,000 savings, I guess I'll go back to. But what we're, just to maybe elaborate on this street sweeper again with another point, like I said, we were doing about 2 laps of the town a year. It's kind of at the point where, with the calls that we kind of get, and even from what we're seeing, we'd like to do 3 laps or maybe even more of the town, just to keep up with what we have and what we think would look right. But instead of asking for more money in that operating budget, we this has been kind of on our minds for a couple of years, and we thought this was a good time to bring it out. But that 73,000 is completely eliminated basically from the operating budget, and the 13,000 goes into the fleet budget.
I don't disagree with the expense at all. I mean, we all get complaints when we have new construction of roads that could be touched up, that we end up having to go through the contractor, and they hire somebody else. It might be nice to have that machine and offer that contractor an option that we might be able to expedite the process, and that would help them and help the residents at the same time. So I think having that tool in our arsenal, although we're not going to dedicate it for jobs like that, would be handy to have. So thank you.
Councillor Capita.
Thank you, Your Worship. Mr. Osborne, much to my colleagues' questions about the street sweeper, I really appreciate the idea. what's the life of the machine from your perspective, sir?
I think through the kind of the finance, we usually give it a 10 years, but through Mr. Coghill's experience, usually you'll get closer to 12, maybe 13 years out of it, likely.
A supplemental, Your Worship?
Go ahead, Councillor Capita.
Just a question about the Normandy Sidewalk. I was looking through my notebook, and I know that we had discussed expansion of sidewalks across Normandy. And I'm just wondering, is this a part? Is there more coming, or where do we stand on that proposed document? I'm sorry, I can't remember where we were.
I think what Mr. Mara, and if he wants to jump in, he can. I think he was, like overall, Normandy had been identified in our overall active transportation policy that I believe was in 2020 that we brought to council. It wasn't at the top of the priority list. And when we received this request from council to look at the Normandy sidewalk, we specifically, I think, zone or kind of looked at this section because it is closer to the commercial area and connecting this last piece of houses to the kind of Malden Center. When you jump over there is that section of Normandy kind of in the middle where there aren't any houses fronting the north side of the road there. So the other section to look at further down by here in Church, we don't have a specific timeline, I don't believe it, in mind for that. Should council wish to kind of expedite that section as well, we could probably look at that maybe in the 2023 budget, or if wanted even earlier, we could look at that. But I think we wanted to focus on one area because we know the difficulties that we kind of occur with, a certain block of residents when we do, bring these forward. So I think that was the only area identified with a kind of a specific timeline in mind.
Mr. Mara, you want to add something?
Yes, Mr. Osborne covered that off fairly well. This section, we had identified two sections on Normandy. This section that's in this budget, and also the section between 10th Street and Huron Church line. Certainly looking at the pressures of the budget this year, we could have put both in here, but we decided to take the one that was actually cheaper. That probably provides a little bit more bang for our buck because it connects a number of residential houses to our commercial areas. So we brought the cheaper one forward. And quite frankly, it's probably the one that's a little bit less intrusive on some of those homes because those particular houses in this section are set further back from the road. There's larger driveways. So what we remove from the driveway is a little bit more negligible relative to parking in the driveway. The next section between 10th and Huron Church line is certainly subject to council's approval, council's wishes. We could bring that forward in future years, but that one is a little bit more intrusive to those particular residents because they do not have very deep driveways, and obviously there's no parking on Normandy as well. So we have heard some concerns come forward with some of those residents. They were all advised when this report was originally brought forward to council, answering the council's question. So that is kind of the premises of what you see and why you see this particular one item there, not both of them.
Thank you, Worship. You've answered my questions.
Any other council questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to Culture and Rec. Thank you, Jonathan.
Good afternoon, Your Worship and members of council. As we look back on 2021, there's no doubt that the pandemic has been hard on the Culture and Recreation Department. Since March of 2020, our facilities have closed and reopened on 3 separate occasions, and the regulations and protocols have been changed and updated more times than we can count at this point. Throughout this, the Culture and Recreation team has continued to think outside the box. They pivoted and figured out new ways to offer programs and services and stay connected with our patrons despite closures and capacity restrictions. A great deal of time, thought, and effort went into developing processes to help the community carefully return to recreation programs, facilities, and events. In spite of the ever-changing public health restrictions, the team has remained positive throughout these challenges. They created safe events and programs that more than 20,000 people took part in throughout 2021. We have steadily increased our programming capacities throughout the year with the return of swimming lessons, community programs such as art and dance lessons, and popular events like the Sunday night markets. New events like Parks Power Hour and the Holiday Lights programming were also added. Our fitness memberships continue to increase weekly, and our arena rentals are nearly back to pre-pandemic levels. In March, we were successful in a software upgrade and implementation that's been beneficial both to our patrons and to our staff. In fact, 80% of our program registrations are now completed online. Preparation and printing of the seasonal activity guide has been eliminated, and communicating digitally with our participants through targeted emails and text messaging is now possible. We added self-serve kiosks that are available for the public at the Volmer, and the printing of paper class lists and attendance sheets has been eliminated and has been replaced with real-time access to those lists and the ability to take attendance through the software. We also have highly detailed analytics that are available through the software that will be able to help us guide future decision-making. The department also worked on a special event strategy throughout the year in preparation for the return of third-party organized events and in preparation for the opening of the new event center. This strategy will be presented to council early next year. In addition to the planned 2021 goals, the department benefited from the addition of 2 new full-time recreation programmer positions and the recruitment of a new manager of culture and recreation. Technical difficulties there. Sorry, I apologize. I lost my screen for a second there. We also had some internal changes to areas of responsibility within the department and division of duties. As we were closing and reopening throughout the pandemic, it helped us to identify some gaps within the department and as well as new ways of serving the public. The altered structure has led us to a more consistent and improved engagement with our community user groups, and also with enhanced communication through social media and our website. Beyond managing restrictions and guidelines, priorities for 2022 include continued enhancement of both internal and external communications, implementing strategies for event hosting, executing events at the new event center, and expanding our heritage programming. If you just want to go to the next slide, Mr. Ferraro, if you're able. Thank you. There's no service level increases proposed for the department for 2022. However, I will note that there have been some minor changes due to the elimination of the Team Leader 1 position. These positions were eliminated and replaced with the 2 full-time recreation programmer positions that I mentioned previously. As far as capital enhancements, the details on the Small Coast Waterfront Project Phase 2 will be provided in a report scheduled for later on the agenda. In conclusion, it's likely that 2022 will be another challenging year as we continue to navigate through the pandemic, but the Culture and Recreation team will continue to adapt and be resilient to ensure the best possible services for the public. And that concludes my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions there may be.
Thank you, Mr. Finaro. Councillor Reno.
Thank you, Patty. I won't put you on the spot if this is a question that needs to go to Dale, but I'm going to try you first. Seeing that your inflationary charges are almost 30% of your approved budget, you did mention that the change of in personnel from the team leader positions to the new positions are accounted in there. How much of that inflationary charge is from that change? And the other thing is that what would you identify as your biggest challenge in that inflationary change? Because it seems high compared to some of the other departments.
I'm going to look to Mr. Ferraro or Mr. Langlois for some input on that.
Looks like Dale's going to take this one.
So the inflationary changes is net of the elimination. There was the team leader 1 positions, which were part-time positions, replaced. I think there's 4 or 3 in total that were replaced with, excuse me, 2 full-time positions. So there is a difference there. That makes up a large portion of the inflationary changes, but not all of it. Some of the other they're related to the new position increases. There is labor related increases like such as conferences and seminars and training that corresponds with that as well. That makes up nearly $10,000 Insurance as well, that's split amongst the departments. As we know, that's going up over 13%. So that makes up the Public Works and Culture Rec have the largest portion of the insurance allocation. So they make up a greater proportion of that. And overall, I think that makes up the majority of the inflationary increase within that department. There's a couple others, well, there is the minimum wage increase flow through effect as well. That also is inflationary in nature. So as we know, kind of came late in the year that we found out that part-time or minimum wage increases are occurring, and that does flow through part-time wage rates to keep us competitive. So that's also another factor. So if
Perfect. That's appreciated. I mean, I don't want anybody to think that I'm on the attack or anything. I just wanted to be able to explain it if anybody asks me. And I think that explanation, especially with the minimum wage increase, it all makes sense. Thank you.
Sorry, if I could just add to that point, those points, that the budget of recreation and culture is a net budget. There's a significant amount of departmental revenue in there. So the budget is only approved as 322 overall, but there's a significant amount of expenses offset by a significant amount of revenue. So therefore, that change may seem like a larger percentage because the revenue is lowering the grant expenditure of the department.
That's fair. Thank you.
Thank you, Tano. Councillor Iudicio Spagnolo.
Thank you. Through you to Mrs. Finaro. I just have a quick question. The money that we had allocated for Strawberry Festival and Last Call Before Fall that we didn't use, obviously due to COVID, or is that reflected in the 2022 budget? Like for the inflation changes, like was there the money that we didn't use, are we going to be saving that money that we saved because we didn't use them due to the COVID? Is it reflected now in the 2022 budget? Am I asking a question?
I don't think it's been reallocated to the, do you mean, have we reallocated it so that we have?
So we have funds for the
2022?
Yes.
No, I believe that the money that's any surplus goes into a general fund, I believe. And I'll look again to Mr. Langlaws and Mr. Ferraro on that, but we wouldn't apply that money to the 2022 budget. No, it would be the same amount.
So just on that note, the budget hasn't changed from year to year. We haven't eliminated anything, even if the pandemic worsens and we don't have those events, we're keeping that funding in there. The unused funding does go to the bottom line. Some of the other areas throughout the year where we were short on revenue, with the Vollmer Center being closed, the savings from not having those expenditures kind of helps offset a portion of that. So it does kind of go to the bottom line, or, there have been some other events, some virtual events and some other events that we've been trying to have, some other outdoor events that funding would be used to fund rather than what it was originally intended for.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Seeing no other questions. Thank you, Ms. Finaro. I believe you're completed your presentation. And we'll go to fire service. Chief, are you there?
Yes.
There he is. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship, and members of council. For the new members of Team LaSalle and for the viewing audience out there, I'd just like to maybe refresh everyone on the very high level operating philosophy of the fire service. Fire services in North America basically operate with or need to provide 3 lines of defense. So the 3 lines of defense that all the fire services are concerned about and need to provide are public education, fire prevention, and should those 2 lines of defense fail, provide emergency response. So all 3 of these lines of defense are then like what we do locally is basically what our local needs and circumstances are, and also what our community risk assessment issues are, and then we kind of focus our activities to accomplish or mitigate our local risks. With respect to the 2021 goals, the fire master plan recommendations, this is going to be an ongoing objective or goal going forward. The fire master plan had 46 recommendations in it. So far, 20 have been completed and 9 are in progress. Some of these recommendations that are in the status of in progress are going to remain in that status for a while. So as you can imagine, like one of the recommendations was to move to get 4 full-time firefighters on shift per day. And that's going to take probably another 7 years to achieve that. As you can imagine, the low-hanging fruit or the easy recommendations have been completed, and we'll continue to work on these in upcoming years. The details of each of the fire plan recommendations, what we have completed, what's been done for each of those, that was part of last night's council agenda package. With respect to fire prevention activities, the COVID-19 pandemic obviously impacted this for us a little bit, as we weren't able to get into some of the facilities that we normally would. But with the addition of the additional full-time firefighters, we were able to do some very well and detailed pre-plans. The firefighters that conducted these pre-plans then presented their results to our entire fire team. And this increases our confidence in responding to those facilities, as well as improving the quality of our response. This year, we also introduced fire safety audits. So a fire safety audit is a checklist that we would complete at any building that we go into, whether it's commercial or residential. And it basically addresses some safety hazards. And I'm happy to share that this new tool is proving to help mitigate community risk. With respect to public education, obviously we couldn't get into the schools and some of the senior centers this year, again, because of COVID-19. But we were able to make use of social media platforms, our website, and providing information and educational videos on there. We had great team help with this. Everybody was involved, everyone was enthusiastic, and we gained almost 5,000 new followers, and we had tens of thousands of impressions, which is great for a fire service of our size. With respect to leadership transition and the addition of full-time firefighters, the full-time firefighter training was completed early in this year. And as you're aware, the deputy fire chief and the fire chief transition also began in the first quarter. And I'm extremely pleased with our team, the resulting enthusiasm, and the cohesiveness of our team. For the 2022 goals, we're going to continue on with the fire master plan recommendations. We have met with our team and we're prioritizing those, and we'll accomplish as many of those as we can. And we can continue to prepare our updates to the fire committee and council. As the director of HR had mentioned, talking about performance evaluation, the fire service is a service that can really help improve our team here with some feedback for our team with respect to performance evaluation. And we're looking forward to implementing a strategy for documented self-reflection, as well as feedback, and providing training for our entire team, not only on how to conduct a performance evaluation, but also how to participate and provide that information. Hoping to accomplish that in line with the target set out by HR of the third quarter. And then finally, the fire education and awareness program and campaign, we're going to work closely with the strategy and engagement department to continue to address issues identified within our community risk assessment, and just to continue on with our lines of defense of public education and fire prevention. The next slide, please. So with respect to the budget, the inflationary changes are mainly as a result of wages. It's almost $100,000 for the increase of wages. The other increase there, the three main components there are insurance, vehicle maintenance, and station supplies, but it is all relative to, we're not in control of those increased costs. The service level changes, we have a $200,000 item there, and this is the build up to the fire master plan. Or sorry, it's not the fifth and final stage. That was the last unit there, the mobile fire unit. This is the fifth and final payment for our live fire training unit. So provincially, we are legislated as a fire service to conduct live fire training at least annually. And this mobile unit allows us to do that very well. And everyone's always very enthusiastic for this training. I'm not sure if there's any questions.
Any council questions? I'm seeing none. Chief, thank you for the presentation, and we'll go to the next chief, Chief Davies from Fire.
From police, good afternoon, Your Worship, and members of council. I just wanted to go over several things with respect to what's happening within our police department and give you an overview of what's happened throughout the past year and where we come to get to today, and how this looking for a service delivery increase from 2 constables to try to meet the needs of our service going forward. Since taking over as chief, I've conducted a continuous review of our existing operation, and certainly part of that looks well into the beyond next year and into the future, several years down the road, and trying to come up with a plan as to where we need to go. This has refocused our core policing responsibilities and ensuring that we look after the safety and security of our community. I've developed several service delivery committees to look at different aspects of our policing operation to ensure we maximize efficiency and effectiveness. You're going to hear that message over and over again with me. Even Councillor Capita referred to that in one of his comments yesterday at the council meeting. Efficiency and effectiveness. That's one thing in policing that we look for and we strive for all the time. Try to maximize any money that's given to us, that we use it in a fiscally responsible manner, and we maximize the use of that money to make sure that we're being as effective as possible. And our vision and strategic plan for the future is being developed, not in isolation, but certainly in concert with the town's 30-year strategic plan and the newly released community safety and well-being plan. We're getting our house in order by identifying priorities through strategic deployment of our human and financial resources. And certainly, personally, I'm looking forward to actually delegating some of my current workload, because that which I brought with me from my role as staff sergeant into the chief's office, I'm certainly looking forward to passing that along to some of the other leadership team. As you can see in the next slide, I can jump ahead just quickly, and I will refer back to this slide, but this next slide shows our organizational chart for our service and what the plan is moving forward. And as you can see below the ranks of staff sergeants, there's 4 different distinct divisions: our community patrol, criminal investigation, information services, and special services. What we're looking to do, and again, we can only draw from so much resources that we have, we're looking to bolster our area in the special services division. That is, if you look there, there's our community liaison officers, one, our coast officer, which is our mental health support officer, a traffic officer, as well as an administrative sergeant to oversee that particular operation. A lot of this is just redeployment of the existing resources, but taking some of those resources comes from our community patrol division. That's where people are, and moving them out to specialize in certain areas
we need to restock basically our community patrol division. One thing that in a policing environment, we don't hire staff sergeants or deputy chiefs. Well, I guess deputy chiefs we've got, or chiefs, but anybody above the rank of sergeant, sergeant or staff sergeant wouldn't get hired from outside our service. That means that anybody coming into a policing environment, we usually start at an entry level position as constable and move their way up through the ranks. So the luxury that we have, if you call it that if we're taking on new roles within our service, is to bring somebody in at a lower rate of pay so that we can free up an existing experienced officer to go in and meet a special area. So just referring back to the previous slide, I'll go back, if we can go back there. At the bottom of the trends issues there, I'll talk specifically about those 5 different areas about planning ahead, human resources, partnerships, IT, and policy review. As far as the planning ahead goes, again, looking to the future, we realize that I guess we have to look in the past a bit here and to see where we come from and where we need to go. Now, in 2021, the service, the LaSalle Police Service operated with only 33 active officers for a population over 33,000. That means there's a ratio of 1 officer for every 1,000. That's far beyond any other service in the province that was operating this past year. Our authorized strength for 2021 was 37 officers. We have since hired 2 experienced officers that started 2 weeks ago. Glad to have them. They're very welcome and they're fitting in very well. But when you actually divide it up compared to our population, that represents 1 officer for every 892 residents. Last officer increase the last increase to our authorized complement was hired in 2009. At that time, our population to police officer ratio was 1 for 784. So, and you compare that to what's been happening elsewhere in the town, since 2017, if you look on page 55 of your budget document, page 55 shows the town of LaSalle's organizational chart. Since between 2017 and 2021, other town departments have hired 23.5 full-time equivalent of members, and we haven't hired any since 2009. We are severely lacking in the area of growth. We, as I'll explain here in a minute, I'll go on to a little bit further here, but according to the latest data available from Stats Canada from 2018, it indicates, with the exception of South Simcoe, LaSalle has the least number of officers per capita. In comparison to South Simcoe, which polices an area just north of Toronto with a population about twice the size of LaSalle, they have just been approved to hire an additional 9 officers and 2 civilians to meet their policing needs. That was just approved last month. In comparison to the average police officer ratio for all of Ontario of 1 to 565, here in LaSalle, we need to hire an additional 21 officers just to be average. That's how far behind we are. I'm not saying that, you know, I had 21 officers because we have a problem with crime and we have those kind of issues, but just to put it in comparison, we've been behind and we need to look again to see where we need to go. So again, if you look at our the organizational chart on the next page again, that just shows where we're actually putting people into the right place so that they're doing the right things at the right time. And the time is when it comes to mental health support and traffic enforcement. Over the last 3 years, we have applied for provincial grant funding, which we received to bolster those particular areas. And that grant funding is going to continue for several more years. But to try to meet those needs and obligations, we certainly want to put the dedicated resources there where they need to go. But by doing so, we also have to backfill the positions that we're taking from patrol to make sure that we have enough and adequate staffing on our roadways as well. Just moving on to crime statistics. According to Stats Canada's Crime Severity Index, LaSalle continues to rank as one of the safest communities in all of Canada, placing 3rd for 2020. And one could argue that Canada is one of the safest countries in the world, which would suggest that our country is one of the safest places to be anywhere on this planet. Although 2020 is an anomaly due to the pandemic, the level of crime cannot be taken for granted. There are investigations currently underway which support our need for this timely increase in staffing. And again, the criminal investigation unit is one of the areas we want to push some people toward and have some dedicated strength in there. And just to kind of give you an overview of how that happened. 3 years ago, we have applied to the Community Safety and Policing Grant for funding a mental health support officer. The dynamic at the particular time was to use an existing detective constable in our criminal investigations unit as our mental health support officer. So 75% of her time is devoted specifically to mental health support, which means that we just took away 75% of the ability of for our criminal investigations unit to continue or have a full-time equivalent of lost 75% of that. So that it becomes problematic because sorry, I just lost my screen. That becomes problematic because that's not really conducive to investigating crime as well as dealing with mental health support. So basically we stretch yourself too thin. So my ambition going forward is to move the particular role from the mental health support role right out of our criminal investigations unit, stand alone on its own, is reportable to an administrative sergeant. They'll conduct the business that they need to satisfy our grant requirements, and our criminal investigations unit will be bolstered with a full-time investigator, which we need. Again, just moving on, our cost per capita, the service continues to operate at one of the lowest costs per capita for policing. Currently, in 2020, the service's final expenses totaled $7,589,645. When if divided by Stats Canada population figures of 33,106, actually equals $229 per resident per year. And that rate is actually consistent or very close to the figures that for providing OPP services in rural municipalities throughout the province, which is very, very cost effective. So how can we do this? So taking the population to police officer ratio, crime stats, and cost per capita into account, one would surmise that the service is an excellent example to others. But I believe the credit collectively belongs to our leadership, our partner agencies, residents, and service members. We all believe in our common purpose and are willing to defend it. As a service, we've asked much of our members, especially over this past year, managing our responsibilities while short-staffed. All service members have stepped up, filling in the gaps, knowing that additional help is coming. Although our services are experiencing staffing shortage, although other services are experiencing staffing shortages due to PTSD, our members continue to face our day-to-day challenges as well as a pandemic and provide exceptional service. Morale is currently high with our members, and they believe in the direction our service is currently taking. And for the human resources side, again, as I mentioned in our organizational chart, it provides clarity on the number of identified priorities we have for our service. The budget increase due to the change in service accounts for the hiring of 2 additional officers to add to our authorized strength, totaling 39 for 2022. Upon approval, these 2 new recruit constables will attend the police college in January and will be ready for independent deployment for the summer months, which is generally our busy time. The 2 recruit constables will be assigned to community patrol, again, thereby freeing up more experienced officers to be redeployed to special roles in criminal investigations and special services. Our priorities are focused on criminal investigation, community liaison, mental health support, and traffic enforcement. This will also bolster our ability to satisfy the continued provincial grant funding, as I mentioned, for our mental health and traffic enforcement initiatives. The organizational chart, if you notice, will also focus on succession planning, thereby providing additional motivational opportunities to strive for in the area of criminal investigation, special services, or promotion. So our officers on the community patrol side of things can now have a place or additional places to look for as far as motivating towards the coast unit, towards community liaison, a traffic enforcement unit, or even the detective area, the criminal side of things. And again, our sergeants now have an additional area to look towards too. It could either be as the detective sergeant or the administrative sergeant. The administrative sergeant role is also being looked at as a fill-in role for our staff sergeants. So again, from succession planning, when our staff sergeants may be absent due to vacations or other reasons, the administrative sergeant will be one that could fill in. And just moving on from the previous slide, we just want to go back one if we could. There we go. On the partnership side of things, the service is not an island and we can never function as one. And we must maintain and continuously seek out new partnerships to be effective. So Jason and I have been effective in reconnecting with our town partners in finance, IT, facilities, in the pursuit of efficiencies. We have partnered with the Director of Finance in developing a 2022 budget that we collectively believe is reasonable and financially sound. With the assistance of the Director of Finance, our budget presentation to the LaSalle Police Services Board on Thursday, November 4th was approved as presented. We have actively pursued alternatives to our existing facility management and maintenance model. Rather than highly trained and paid police officers trying to resolve building issues such as electrical and plumbing, they're now the responsibility of the facilities manager where efficiencies can be maximized. Put that into perspective. Last year, we had an issue with emergency lighting within the building, and it became problematic because the previous administration dealt with the facility in-house, And it was kind of left to here. Last year as a staff sergeant, here I'm trying to figure out, well, who do I contact to get the emergency lighting fixed, and became somewhat problematic. And here as a staff sergeant charged with the safety and security of our community, I'm trying to figure out an electrical issue and how to change how somebody's supposed to come into our building and fix it for us. So again, putting the silo in the right place, looking for the efficiencies. The facilities managers deals with our facilities. They can find the efficiencies where the efficiencies are, and make sure that contractors coming into our facility are within certain guidelines. I couldn't tell you what an electrician makes or what I should be paying them. All I know is I needed it fixed. I got to call somebody to come in. So now it can be left to the facilities manager to look after that efficiently. On the IT side of things, we're seeking to maximize our efficiency and effectiveness in the area by revisiting existing contracts and agreements, as well as partnering and sharing of IT services and support with the town. So we've connected with our IT support people at the town, the IT director and manager there, to see what we can be doing there to bolster our area here, as well as perhaps share services in the future and make it as efficient as we can. And it's to recognize that IT is a fundamental element of any progressive police service. It can no longer be viewed as a nice to have, but must be front and center in all that we do. One of the things right from the beginning for me was that IT cannot be just viewed as a little side thing that just happens to affect policing. It's got to be the hub of what we do. If you come back into our building and see what we do every day, the laptop computers and the cars that are constantly functioning, probably I'd say a good 60-70% of our officers' time is actually spent on a computer. And that's an area that we certainly have to keep the attention on. Make sure that we're at not so much the cutting edge, but make sure we're well aware of what's going on around us and keeping in pace with what we need to there. Having said that, there's part of the, I think on the third page, Tono, if you can flip down two more, there we go. Some of the inflationary changes that are addressed in there do cover the cost of our contracts for our IT and our software that we use for reporting. But we're also revisiting those contracts to see if there's something that we can do to perhaps take it over a longer term, add things to it to try to maximize the use of that. Again, maximizing our efficiency and effectiveness. On the policy review side of things, our reference manual database, in which we house all our policies, contains over 3,100 documents dealing with how we are to conduct business. Many of our policies have been developed in accordance with time-specific legislation and practices. Through reassignments and promotions in early 2022, our attention will be focused on policy review to ensure we are up to date. So the focus there is going into the new year. Should the budget be approved and the organizational chart put into practice, as my intention is, there'll be several promotions from deputy chief down to staff sergeant. There'll be 3 sergeants promoted, as well as redeployment of sergeants to criminal investigations, as well as to special services. And then the 3 officers that will be assigned to special services, and hopefully 2 new officers hired. So it's a lot of moving parts, but it also focuses specifically on the adding to complement of 2 additional officers. So the goal of, just wanted to reaffirm something here. And the goal of the LaSalle Police Service is to protect our community in a manner that promotes pride within our organization and with the citizens we serve, by providing a professional and innovative police service. In attaining this goal, we will be committed to ensuring that we're compassionate and accountable, fostering trust with our community through integrity and mutual respect. That is the goal of the LaSalle Police Service. We are committed to strategically fulfilling our mission, goals, and objectives in a manner that aligns with the town's long-term strategy of promoting organizational excellence, sustaining strong service, strengthening community engagement, building on high quality of life, and ensuring our human and financial resources are managed in a responsible manner. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you, Chief of Police. I said Chief of Fire, but you're right, Chief. You shouldn't be running around looking for light bulbs. And if we can help with our building department to help you, it's going to save us all money in the long run. So any council questions? We'll start with Councillor Reno and then Councillor Capita.
Thank you, Your Worship. I want to thank the chief for explaining something, specifically the change in duties and how it relates to the new position we brought in for last year. and explaining to us that by bringing in the mental health officer, we actually lost policing force in the town. That's an important point for me, because I'll be honest with you, it's kind of problematic, because although you did say that our costs are in line with OPP models, there was a chart that was released by Leamington last week that showed that we are still quite heavy compared to those services. But we all realize that it's not the same service, that we're getting a much premium service, and we pay for that. And I haven't had anybody argue with me that they're not getting bang for their buck in LaSalle. And I haven't had anybody suggest that they would withdraw the support of a local force like ours. So you are greatly appreciated, and your service is recognized across the town. And I was going to be a little critical about bringing on the 2 extra people, but really by enhancing our force, by bringing on the mental health officer, and taking away from the foot cop, for choice of better words, means that we've taken away from what people really want and what people ask for. And although we've enhanced it, we've taken away as well. So I appreciate your explanation, and it makes things clear for me, and I have no questions anymore, and I have no objection to the 2 new positions. Thank you.
Councillor Capita, then Councillor Carrick, then Councillor Desjardins.
To my colleagues' point, Your Worship, just a point of clarification for me, Chief. So when you talked about the dollar value that, again, Councillor Reno brought up in relation to the OPP, I know that there's so many police services in the province of Ontario. Where do we rank as cost effectiveness, if you know off the top of your head, sir? Because again, I'd like to understand how we're able to be the 3rd safest community in Canada using the dollar values that you spoke to, sir.
That's a very good point. And to find the metrics for that, I really can't. I can't tell you exactly to this day comparison to the OPP to show you where we kind of stand on a chart to say we're higher or lower with our services locally. That information is not released by Stats Canada any longer. It used to be. I'm not sure how far back it goes before they stopped publishing that information, but it's been a while now. But I can tell you that I did keep track of that for several years, and I did notice where we stand, and our cost per capita for LaSalle has not significantly increased. It's kept within that ballpark. So I indulged a bit there saying that it is still cost effective, because I reasonably believe it is. I mean, it's not hard to, if you wanted to probably go to each annual report for different police services and take up the population and compare it to how much their operating costs were and divide it. That could probably be done. I haven't done that. I used the Stats Canada data from several years ago when I did, but $229, I recall, I'm guessing maybe 10 years ago, we were around the $214, $217 mark, and now we're at $229. So it's still within that, in my opinion, still very, very cost effective, and we still are on track where we need to be. Now, you mentioned about going back to our crime rates and being 3rd safest. That is, if you look at those 3 things in totality, again, population to police officer ratio, the crime severity index, and the, what's the 3rd one? Sorry, just lost my thought here. Cost per capita, or crime stats, and their population to police officer ratio. If you look at all 3 in totality, again, you know, there should be other services knocking on our door going, what are you guys doing so right? But what I'm going to tell you is that, again, this isn't a police department being the greatest thing since sliced bread. This is the community. This is the leadership making proper decisions. Our town officials, everybody in partnership that is making this happen. I can tell you that because our crime stats are low, sometimes what happens, sorry, my life as well, with our crime stats are low, what that does is if we had, let's say, an example of a robbery, we have 2 robberies this year, we have 1 next year, and then we have 1 the year after. That's going to show a 50% reduction and then 100% increase year by year. So when those figures are low and you use them on a comparator year by year, sometimes it can show a drastic increase. Whereas if you have another service or another area is reporting larger numbers of those incidents that are occurring,
And there's one or two or three variations. It's very minor, obviously, as a percentage. So those things do affect our numbers. And but again, I think it's a shared responsibility. It's a shared kudos for everybody. It's kind of a group effort that's caused this to happen. So am I taking credit for that? Absolutely not. But what I'm saying is that everybody together, the community, our town, our leadership, our police service, we're doing everything that we can. Our people, I believe that our people really appreciate us. The message I consistently hear, even looking at the community safety and well-being plan again this morning, it does state in there how people are satisfied with the police service, and they really like us, and we do hear that message over and over again.
Well, thank you very much, Chief, to you and your compliment. And I will say this, it is your leadership and the men and women of the LaSalle Police Service that make a difference in our community. You've answered my questions. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Capita. Now, Councillor Carrick.
Thank you. Through Your Worship, to the Chief, just some comments. So I'm really, myself and actually another fellow member on Councillor Anita, we work in that field, mental health. That is the future, and IT is the future, and I get that. We're all very supportive of that. So in order to keep the officers healthy, you got to have those supports mentally. And it's changed so much now as we move along forward into the future. So that's becoming the mainstream. It's no longer, it's just as important actually as a foot soldier or a patrol officer, to be honest with you. So having said that, bringing on those two officers and the way you're structuring things as you're moving forward, I think is great. And I just want to say that we all get it. One of the number one complaints I get, and I'm not even on the board, is speeders. So having said that, if we can attack that side of things, I'm not telling you what to do, but I'm just saying that would be a nice option. But mental health is so important, and you got to keep the officers healthy. And I'll just leave it at that. And good job.
Thank you, Councillor Carrick. And now Councillor Desjardins.
Thank you. Through you to the chief. Actually, Councillor Carrick stole some of my comments. I'm very happy that we have someone on the force to deal with mental health issues. I think that's very important. We live in such changing times that we have to help support each other as best we can. And I think it's very important that with things that the police service deals with, that we have someone there to help them. I think that's great. I am excited to see 2 new constables coming in. And as Councillor Carrick said, speeders is probably one of the things I hear the most about. So I'm very excited to hear that we're going to have 2 traffic enforcement officers. And congratulations. Do we have our 2 new hires yet, or?
Over the last several weeks, our recruiting committee has been narrowing down the list. So we do have 2. We'll have offers of employment ready to go for them. It was kind of a rush for us because January 12th is the first day of police college. So we had to have things in place should council approve the budget.
Oh, congratulations. This is one of the reasons that I will continue to support a community police service versus anything else, is how well we operate in LaSalle and how we take care of things, and we keep an eye on each other. So that's very appreciated. So thanks for the excellent report here for the budget.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Desjardins. I think the theme is we're happy with now Chief Duncan Davies, and we have to say, hey, thank you. A big thank you, because he started January 29th as acting chief as we were going through the process. And then we had acting deputy chief Jason Wood step in. So they're 2 officers short. So by replacing the 2 new hires, they're replacing the chief and deputy. Now we'll have an additional 2. So hope it helps with the police officers not having any burnout to pick up the pace. But I just want to make a comment. Councillor Reno said he was thinking of questioning the 2 additional officers. And I just want to make this comment, not just to him, to everyone, that we are the 3rd safest community in Canada, in one of the safest countries in the world, and we want to stay that way. And part of that is we talked about mental health. I think 3 or 4 councillors mentioned that. If we don't take care of our officers and give them the compliment they deserve, we're going to have mental health issues or burnout. I can tell you as a chair and Deputy Mayor Meloche as the vice chair, and I think Chief Davies will agree that we and the board, not just the 2 of us, the board is in full support and they're very happy with the results thus far with Chief Davies and Acting Chief Jason Woods. An announcement should come shortly on the deputy chief position, but that's not solidified and decisions not made. Well, the decision's made. It's just we have to dot the i's, cross the t's, and then an announcement will be forthcoming. So sorry for the long comments, but we appreciate what you're doing and the service, and I think everyone on this council agrees with me. So thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, now we'll go to Dale, non-departmental.
Thank you. So this is the last part of the budget presentation. Basically, all the changes here are inflationary. Non-departmental basically is various divisions within the municipality that don't have one particular manager who's in charge. It kind of the costs are kind of on their own and separated. Couple changes. They're all inflationary. The police service board, there's a $500 inflationary increase. The conservation authority is $11,000 increase. Crossing guards, there's been some adjustments there. It's actually a slight decrease of $2,700. Then we get into the garbage collection and disposal. Inflationary increases. The collection, we put in $20,000, and for disposal $30,000. And as I mentioned earlier in yesterday's report, the garbage collection's going to be significantly higher than that for 2022, but we are planning on funding that from the tax stabilization reserve until we get the results from the RFP. We should know the results of that in March, and then we'll budget for that accordingly moving forward into the 2023 budget. So that does wrap up both the operating and capital budget portions of the agenda. There's just a couple items that I need to talk about. When we did go through the capital plan, when I presented the 5-year capital plan, there was a recommendation that we need to adopt. So there's 3 items that we're going to look at right now. First, the adoption of that recommendation, and then next I'd be happy to answer any questions, but next we need to adopt the budget in principle, should council wish. And then third would be adopt the bylaw to issue the debt so that I can move forward with that application tomorrow.
Okay, any questions before we go to the recommendations? Okay, so the first recommendation is that the report of the Director of Finance dated November 22nd, 2021 regarding capital plan 2022 to 2027 be approved in principle. Moved by Councillor Carrick, support by Councillor Reno. All in favor? That carries. Thank you very much. The second recommendation is the debt issuance. I won't read the whole recommendation, but basically we're approving $7 million debt with a 20-year term at a locked-in interest rate. Moved by Councillor Desjardins and support by Councillor Udicho Spagnolo. Councillor Reno, did you have a question?
I just want a clarification. Was that 7 million or 8 million?
7 million.
7.
All in favor? That carries. Thank you. Third one is the Petite Côte waterfront development. No, not yet. Sorry. Just turn on the
Thank you, Mayor. We're at the point in the meeting now where we would be prepared to entertain a motion with respect to the proposed 2022 budget. So if there's a direction from council on that, that would be our next step. And then we would move on to the other reports.
Moved by Councillor Carrick. You have a question? Sure.
Is this the point where we're going to make some comments about the budget?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, because if we're going to pass it, we better make some comments before, at least I'm thinking that anyways.
Okay, if you want to make comments, go ahead.
Yeah, I do. So having said that, I think it's a very responsible budget. Would I like it to be zero? Yes. But understand that inflation is 4% or better. 1.75% is very reasonable. And I look at it as a council term movement. And hopefully we're not setting it up for the future to have to work too hard to keep the numbers down. But if you divide all 4 years, even with this 1.75, it's only like 0.93%, 0.9% a year average. So that's less than 1%. So if you told me before we started, if we could go under 1% every year for 4 years, I think that's very reasonable, especially going through a pandemic and everything else we've been through. So I'm very supportive of this budget, and I will more than happy to move it.
Okay, moved by Councillor Carrick, support. Is that Councillor Capita? Are you supporting? And a comment?
Yes, sir. I'd like to second it. Much to what my colleague, Councillor Carrick has said, a very responsible, very encompassing budget. And I'd like to thank the financial senior leadership group. I had 2 paper copies of the budgets dropped off because I have 2 residents that ask me for the copies of the budget each year. I don't know if they reached out to you like they have done in the past, the financial gentlemen, but they were very satisfied with what they saw. So I look at it this way. If citizens who ask for copies of the budget go through it and get back to me and say, you've done a good job, I think our senior leadership needs to hear it. And I am fully supportive of the numbers that have come forth because I believe, as my colleague has said, during this time of COVID, a very responsible, well thought out, consistent, well managed proposal to meet the needs of this municipality. Could not be prouder of the team. And it's a privilege to second this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Capita. We have Councillor Riccio Spagnolo, then Councillor Reno.
Thank you. Through you, I just wanted to just acknowledge that I too am very satisfied with this budget. I think it's in line with the inflation. And I think that the team and the leadership has done a great job with presenting us with this budget. So I too will approve this budget.
Thank you, Councillor Riccio Spagnolo. Councillor Reno.
Thank you, Your Worship. I want to thank the financial team for the second year in a row, really reining in the expenses. And I mean, the nice thing about not having an MPAC increase is that you're going to have people having a consistent tax increase year over year. There's no surprises. You know, some of us over the years, because of that increase in assessment, have seen our taxes go up 10 or 15% in a year. Nobody will be able to scream back at us. This will be very predictable for people for the next couple of years, and at least in this year, very predictable. My only concern was when we went through it, as was last year, in reducing that 600,000 down to 300,000. I understand why you did it, and I will have faith in you that things will catch up in the end, because I realize that finance is a multi-moving animal, and that I'm not seeing every little thing that's going to change over the years. So I trust that if you are comfortable that we're going to meet our goals in 5 years, and we'll find a way to get there, I will trust that reducing that number for the sake of the tax rate is the right thing to do. And I appreciate everything, and I will also support the budget.
Okay, thank you. So we have a mover and a seconder. Move Councillor Carrick, second, or support Councillor Capita. All in favor? That carries unanimously. Of course, I'd be remiss without throwing my 2 cents in, and I see this team often, and we've done now 4 budgets. And you're right, Councillor Carrick, it comes in under 1% for average over 4 years. And we could have put off the officers and made it look good, but that's not what we do here. The team here has responsibilities, and we're not putting it off to tomorrow, and we need to support our officers. We discussed mental health, and I think it's very responsible. The team here, again, award-winning. Kudos again to design by Ms. Hadre in the budget. It looks a lot simpler, easier to read, and comfortable. So thanks. And we'll go now to capital project updates.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And so we are prepared to continue on with the budget sessions. We have two reports to be discussed. Again, and more of update reports for council, but there is the first report we'll be talking about the Petite Côte waterfront project, as well as the second report, meaning the Malden Road environmental assessment update on that. Mr. Morrow will be taking the lead on both those projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Militia, Mr. Mayor and Council. I will start off with the first.
Just hold on one second. I know Councillor Carrick has to declare a conflict, so we'll.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, so on item number 2, the Malden Road improvement update, I will declare a conflict as a result of a family member owning a business which will be significantly impacted on through this development.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to try to share my screen here and display a little bit of the diagrams that are part of my report. So hopefully council can see my screen. So certainly I am going to start off first of all with the Petite Côte waterfront project. And certainly it's a lengthy report, and please feel free. I can see all of council. Please feel free during the presentation. If you have a question, raise your hand as I'm going through. I can see all of council, so I can pause and try to address things as we go. Certainly the report before you today is been prepared relative to 3 major items that we have dealt with over the last 12 months. First and foremost, what we're bringing forward today is trying to address a number of the public comments that we have received to date. Secondly, what we are also trying to address is some of the constructability of some of the features that have been kind of uncovered and or discovered over the last 12 months with respect to various background reports such as geotechnical information, archaeological studies, and environmental constraints with respect to some of the wetlands and some of the water's edge features. And thirdly, the 5-year build-out plan is certainly coming forward as a bit of a revision and an update for council, primarily due to some of the cost pressures and some of the rising costs that we have been discovering with respect to the cost of these constructions, some of the inflation costs relative to the original budgets and whatnot. So certainly what you see on the screen before you has been what has been previously approved as a full build out. So this diagram has been provided to the community about 12 months ago when we started our public consultation, and we received some extensive public consultation with respect to this full build out. Certainly we've heard what the comments were. We've also went through and completed some of the background studies. As I mentioned, the geotechnical is probably one of the most important ones that we have kind of went through, and some of the other aspects of archaeological studies that have provided some discoveries of some significant features and some of the environmental constraints as well. As part of this full build out, council is aware that a 5-year plan was previously approved. And on the screen, you see what was approved as the 5-year plan. That was what was previously approved, and I'll run through the individual items individually to kind of refresh council's memory on what was brought forward, and we can kind of go from there. So certainly the first item that is underway and in the progress of being completed is renovations to the event center. Certainly that is underway. The new anticipated timelines for the event center completion is now sometime in around July or August of 2022. Some of these delays have been experienced on that with respect to delivery of some of the materials. So certainly we are working with the current contractor in trying to realize the completion of that for July and August of 2022. The next item that was part of the original 5-year build was the renovation to the Benoit House and the historic zone for museum purposes. So I am going to touch base a little bit more detail with respect to some of the cost pressures that have come around and that are available that we're facing with respect to to the event center, the historic zone, sorry. And certainly it also relates to some of the parking areas that are associated with that historic zone. The next item that was part of the 5-year build, and it's still part of the 5-year build, is a parking lot to support the event center. So certainly what you see here, I'm trying to circle it. It is that parking lot that will be built between the event center and what exists as Bouffard Road right now. That is, we're just in the stages of bringing that forward as a item for tender shortly. We are going out for tender shortly with an expected closing of that tender early in January of 2022. And we're aiming to have that parking lot built and completed to support the opening of the event center. One of the other items that part of the 5-year build is the other parking lot that's immediately within the historic zone. And along with that associated parking lot is the Ulster Street extension and some of the realignment that happens over here. What we have, what I will discuss a little bit later is linking that to when we bring forward some of the finalization of the historic zone. What I can say with respect to the parking areas is what we have discovered is that there is some significant soils challenges out there. Some of the costs that are coming back with respect to building these parking lots are significant. There is about a significant amount of material that has to be removed because of previous filling operations that have occurred on some of these properties, on all of these properties. And that material just has to be removed because it's not sufficient to build parking lots on. So some of these costs, some of these changes relative to what's being built in this 5-year term versus what's going to be built in future years is really being driven by some of the cost challenges with respect to the constructability with respect to the geotechnical information. Another item that was part of the 5-year build is some of the trail connections. That continues to be part of the 5-year build and is expected to occur later on in this 5-year. And when I refer to the 5-year build, that relates for the years from 2021 up to and including 2025. Upgrade to the sports zones, that was part of the 5-year build. There was some previous discussions and decisions made that what was previously shown here was being modified and altered. What has occurred is the tennis courts that were proposed to be rebuilt here are being proposed to be moved to the Vollmer. Certainly that was just approved in the budget, so that will be constructed 4 new tennis courts at the Vollmer for 2022. They will be lit tennis courts. And also the tennis facility at the Vollmer is able to support expansion at that location in the future for additional courts. So the aspect of what is occurring in the sports zone is a bit going to be modified and what will be coming up, and I'll discuss it a little bit later as we talk about modifications and adjustments to the 5-year build-out plan. One of the significant features that was discussed is the construction of the water and ice trail, the water feature and the ice trail feature. There is still the proposal of continuing with that work. It is a significant expenditure. Certainly, we are looking at modifying what the orientation of that is, but we expect that by mid-2022, we should have some sort of preliminary design with respect to what can occur on this and report back to council should this become a issue relative to cost and things of that nature relative to what has to be built. One of the other items that is part of the 5-year build was a playground as part of the water trail ice feature, and that continues to be discussed a little bit later in the report and part of the revised 5-year plan. There are two additional items that I just want to speak briefly about. One is the construction of a storm pump station and upgrades to the former Marina. So certainly that was part of the original 5-year plan to build. And that is coming forward, and it's going to be linked more to the DMAF grant and when we get into some of that preliminary and final design relative to the EA that's out there. So some of those changes are still going to occur, It's probably going to occur sometime more into the lines of 2023 to 2024 by the time we get some of the preliminary design done, detailed design done, and certainly as we get out and tender the works. Some of one of the other minor features that was part of the 5-year plan was certainly doing some level grading and seeding of some of the natural areas, and that continues to be part of it. What we have spoke about in here, and you'll see it as part of the modified master plan, is we've kind of relocated some of the features, and we want to bring this forward to council's attention. So with that, that kind of summarizes a bit of what has been previously approved as part of the 5-year build-out plan for 2021 to 2025. So now I just want to bring this forward to council with respect to some of the proposed changes. I kind of refer to this as our chessboard. The chessboard has stayed the same. We've moved some of the chess pieces around. And some of the chess pieces that were moved, some of the features that were moved relative to the locations of how they're fit out there. Some of it was done for constructability purposes, and some of it was done to address the comments and some of the significant features that we had addressed and heard from the public. So certainly as part of the 5-year build, so this is a bit of a plan to show what a new full build out plan would look like at Front Road. And so what we have here is a bit of a rudimentary sketch. This was put together between Mr. Militia, myself, and some of the senior management team relative to what is available out there. And certainly after today's report, should council agree with this high level concept, we will circle back with JP Thompson to make it look a little bit more official and professional, such as this, as opposed to some of the various square boxes and some of just the text information. So certainly from this revised full build-up plan, which we will look to get council's support in general on, this is now what is being proposed for the 5-year build. So certainly as part of the 5-year build, the event center remains the same. The event center is underway. It will be completed in August of 2022. One of the major changes in this 5-year build is what is occurring in the historic zone and at the Benoit House. There has been some significant challenges when we have now started to work out what the preliminary design will be, all the modifications that have to happen in the Benoit House, and the associated parking lot, the Ulster Street extension, and things of that nature, the carriage house. In addition, just the operational and operating a museum. So what is being proposed as part of the 5-year plan in this report before you today is upgrading and modification of the carriage house. So it will be a complete renovation of the carriage house and ability for the carriage house to open. And what we are envisioning for the carriage house, this will be exterior renovations. This will be interior renovations. It will be a complete renovation of the carriage house to make it used as some sort of visitor center, some sort of information center, or things of that nature on the interim. The other major change in this area is what is going to happen with the house. Originally, what we had proposed to do with the house is do modifications, renovations to get people into the house and utilize it as a museum. Some of those challenges are pretty significant in and around this historic zone. First and foremost, we have a number of archaeological sites that have been discovered. We're currently working through what those are in this entirety of this historic zone where the parking lot goes and all of the lands that lie behind the Benoit House. So there's a number of challenges that we're still working on with respect to the archaeological side of things. In addition to that, introducing lifts within the house, remodifying all the mechanical and electrical, providing emergency stairwells, making it accessible, making it available for the fire code has really significantly put some pressures on the cost and the original cost, in addition to the renovations to the house. As I had mentioned, the parking lot and the roads have added some additional costs. What we're planning as part of this 5-year build, the house does need some attention. We can't leave it in the state that it is because it just will start to deteriorate on us. So what we're proposing as part of this 5-year build is do all exterior renovations. So it will be a complete cleanup of the house on the outside. So there'll be changing of the windows, new roof, exterior brick restoration, foundation waterproofing, all of that stuff to make the entirety of the envelope of the house whole. And this will allow us to be able to extend the life of the house. And certainly in the future, what we will do is do the interior renovations as the next phase of the future phases. It is what will be done on the outside of the house will not be have to be redone as part of the interior renovations. We will work with respect to JP Thompson on what is being done as part of the outside of the house. But as we get into looking what's inside the house, as we start to remove plaster and opening up walls, we are really unsure of the things that we are going to find. And certainly some of those costs have basically quadrupled for this historic zone. In addition to this, in discussions with the culture and recreation area, there is some significant work to do relative to operations of a museum. So there is a whole host of information that we do have to collect, a lot of background studies and information that we do have to collect. So if we were to proceed with the Benoit House, there is a lot of operational needs that probably have to accelerate quite quickly in the aspect of trying to introduce features, introduce museum items, exhibits, whatever those may be, in addition furniture. So it gives us a bit of time on the operational side of things to really develop what the operational plan will be within the house and how it's going to be operated. So this is one of the biggest significant changes. We are, as part of the new 5-year plan, we are doing stuff in the historic zone, and we will have access for the public 2023 to 2024, potentially into the carriage house area, into the actual carriage house, and certainly the Benoit House exterior will be finished. Anything above and beyond that to get people into the Benoit House, we're looking at this as the next 5-year term, pushing that out to the 2026, 2030 timeframe, of which it will allow administration to really refine what the operation of a museum is like, what is going to be in there, really refine things such as the mechanical and electrical. In addition, that when that occurs and we are going to renovate the house for accessibility and get people in there, that's when we will look at potential parking lot and Ulster Street extension and things of that nature. So this is one of the biggest changes in the 5-year plan relative to expectations of what will occur in the historic zone. So that is one of the biggest changes, and certainly as we get through this, we can answer any questions relative to that. On the parking lot side, as I had mentioned, the parking lot for the event center is going to carry on. So certainly you see the gray blocks. Bouffard is going to stay in its current location. There's an ability to not have to touch Bouffard. That will be the interim entrance for the parking lot for the event center, and that will carry on and be completed in 2022. As I had mentioned, again, the parking lot for the historic zone in Benoit House and Ulster Street extension is not part of the 5-year plan. Again, some of those costs have quadrupled, tripled and quadrupled in those areas relative to some of the soils conditions. So certainly not as part of the 5-year plan, but in the future, when we actually get into creating a museum, is when we will bring that parking lot and those road extensions forward. Also, as part of this new 5-year plan, there are proposed again trails and connections to the site that are going to be part of the proposal, and certainly those will be completed later on in this 5-year plan, projected in the 2024-2025 timeframe. As I have noted, sports zone, we have, again, back in the full build version of this, we have removed the tennis from this site. However, what we have done is left and reserved the spot for volleyball, sand volleyball, and basketball area. It's really a reserved spot. It's not part of any rebuild as part of the 5-year plan, but in the long range forecast, eventually, when the commercial area in this quadrant is built and remove some of the existing features, that's when we can entertain or evaluate what are our needs from a sand volleyball and basketball perspective. But as you can see, when we do this 5-year plan, this commercial building is currently shown over top of the existing sand volleyball court. It will be shortened up to keep the volleyball court, to keep the basketball court, and keep the current tennis courts operational at the time of when this is built, if this is what council wishes to do. As I have noted, the water trail ice feature, it remains in the 5-year build. It was one of the most commented on features, some of the things that most people were excited about. It has changed orientations. It was originally in this east-west orientation. Part of that was to fill in some of this existing ditch. We are coming into some environmental concerns. So in order to hopefully bring and accelerate this ice trail water feature, it's still part of the 5-year build. We're just changing the orientation of it in this fashion, and the associated support buildings will be over in this particular area of what we show as a black box for now. But again, please forgive the rudimentary sketch, and certainly we're trying to just highlight some of the changes, and certainly if council agrees with this, we will make these pictures a little bit nicer to present to the public. Playground, again, playground will stay and remain as part of the water feature and ice trail. That will be fit in within this area. Again, we will work with the consultant to see the best way to fit the playground in within this overall component. Again, the upgrade to the former marina and the storm pump station, again, those are completely linked to the storm drainage environmental assessment. What we have done in this particular area is we've shortened up the what we would refer to as a future transient marina. We have shortened that up as part of the plan and as part of the DMAF grant. When we get into how we modify the existing marina cut and build the stormwater management pond, we will deal with how the break wall and things of that nature around what will remain as a future marina cut. We will deal with that as part of the DMAF grant. So certainly those two items are kind of linked together, and they're part of the 5-year plan, but really related more towards the storm drainage improvements. One of the other really big changes relative to what is here is the repositioning and or I guess the lack of relocating the boat launch. One of the other main components of what we heard through the public consultation was that the existing boat launch was sufficient, and why remove the boat launch, create it someplace else. In addition to that, you know, what we were proposing for parking lot as part of the relocated boat launch, it wasn't enough, and things of that nature. And what we're discovering is in this particular area, when we go back through some of the historical pictures, there used to be a whole bunch of cuts that the river used to flow in through this area. Over the years, it all has been filled in. So construction of any sort of building, parking lots, road back in this quadrant, this, I'll call it the northwest quadrant of the site, is becoming problematic. And so what we have done as part of the new future plan is what we are looking at is that becoming the new event lawn. Originally, the event lawn sat in this area. So what we are thinking that this becomes the new event lawn. So what we would do in this area is level grade and seed and basically use this as a bit of a fill area. There are other constraints that we're dealing with respect to disposal of fill. So through all of this construction work, we're going to generate fill the material that we have to dig out of here. And what this allows us to do is dispose of it over here, shape it, put some topsoil on it and seed it. And then we don't have to worry about the existing geotechnical features that are here. And certainly that kind of goes hand in hand with keeping the boat launch in its existing location. So we would not disturb the existing boat launch. It would stay in its existing location. And things such as some additional parking would be added as part of the new revised plan, which will allow some expansion of parking for the boat launch area. Some of the other additional changes as part of this full build out, this new full build out vision is, again, as I mentioned, the event lawn, the festival lawn sits now in this northwest quadrant. Outdoor pool. The original plan did not make provisions for replacement of an outdoor pool. This future new vision reserves a location and a spot for a future outdoor pool should a need arise that we need to bring forward a new outdoor pool. So certainly this new vision kind of reserves a bit of a location and a spot for it, and we will carry this forward should council agree. There was few comments relative to that, asking about the future outdoor pool. Certainly one of the things we were looking at as part of this new vision is just trying to reserve a location for the opportunity to allow us to build something in the future. By not removing the boat launch area, the proposed beach at this location is no longer available. There was a lot of concern, and there still is concern that, you know, if we were to construct a beach in this location, just given the cut, what the water quality would be, and would there be enough turnover of water to keep this water fresh and not have to have beach closures and things of that nature. So this new vision removes any aspect of any beach with respect to the features out here. So certainly that's one major change as well. In addition, this new vision increases the commercial capability and the commercial opportunities. So what used to be the sports zone has been reconfigured significantly. If council remembers, there was a bit of a proposed community center being proposed right on the water's edge. And we do know that when we constructed Riverdance, there's some challenges with the soils here again. So this configuration may be posed challenging, and plus the need for additional community center is unknown at this time. So what we're doing as part of the commercial area is changing this entirety of this area, which used to be the sports zone, into commercial opportunities. There was a lot of comments and a lot of discussion regarding providing opportunities for pubs, restaurants, ice cream parlors, and things of that nature, coffee shops. And certainly this would allow the town to explore some more commercial opportunities. We have reserved a spot for basically a community center, which can also revert back to a commercial pad should the need arise. So certainly there's some major changes in this particular area. And as part of that, we have some parking associated with this commercial area. So as I had said, this is it's a quite involved report. There's some significant changes. And certainly there are 3 recommendations that we are certainly looking for council to support, which would be the first one is to receive this report for information. The second one would be that council supports this new full build out vision. And certainly should council support this full build out vision, we will work with JP Thompson to take this diagram and change it into something that's a lot more presentable and kind of summarize all the changes that have occurred and why they have occurred. And certainly with respect to the new 5-year build vision, this is what the administration is bringing forward to council as the new 5-year build vision. Some of the major changes as part of the 5-year build is what occurs in the historic zone and what happens in this area. And certainly we will continue on with the skate trail water feature. And certainly some of these other aspects, the stormwater management pond, the land bridge, those are all part of the larger storm drainage component. So certainly we will continue to look at that as part of the 5-year build. And then it allows in the next 5 years, should the town be faced with requests or things of that nature for commercial opportunities, there is a spot to introduce some commercial opportunities on an interim basis in this area and utilize Laurier as the continued parking area. We would also look at potentially expanding the parking area eventually back in this area as part of the 5-year build. But again, that's going to be subject to some of the budget. So certainly that has been some of the changes that have occurred before you. Again, this report was kind of put together through the senior leadership team at the town. There is a financial section in here, and certainly Mr. Langlois put together the financial aspect of the plan. But what we propose to build in the 5-year plan still fits within what is currently slated to be part of the debt issuance that was just approved. And really, this is kind of being brought forward to council for approval of those 3 items and those 3 recommendations as part of the report. With that, Mr. Militia or Mr. Langlois, I don't know if you want to add anything further to the financial side of things, but certainly you can probably do so now, I guess.
Sure, I can just speak to the financial portion. So with the proposed plan that Mr. Morrow just presented, we have updated the costs. Some of the costs, like the event center, we know those costs. Those are really accurate costs. The Benoit House, we've received updated costing for those. So to do the first phase, which consists of the exterior preservation and some work on the carriage house and the ground improvements, we have some fairly accurate costs for those. The water and skate feature, we don't have a set cost for that. We have increased the cost, just assuming with the way everything else is going and with inflation and whatnot, that the cost is going to be greater than that. And we can work within that budget, whether we want to, if costs come back more significant, or we could reduce the size, or we could find some additional funding and report back to council at that point in time. And then with the trails, landscaping and bridges, and then the Bouffard temporary traffic lights, those are fairly accurate costs. So the total costs looking at over the next 5 years would be about $35 million. We've already the $10 million, 10 million for the land. We've already incurred those costs, the majority of them. Then looking at the funding source side, so we've already issued $10 million of debt. We've been approved to move forward with the next set of debt issuance, which is $7 million. And then either in late 2022 or early 2023, depending on where interest rates stand, if they start rising rapidly, we're going to look at issuing the debt a little bit sooner. But that'll be the next set of debt issuance, which will basically be $5 million and should be paid off over 5 years. And the plan is, as we move forward with future phases, we'll continuously reissue that debt so that we can continuously improve and move forward with future phases of the waterfront. Also, in the meantime, there has been some additional gas tax funding, some one-time doubling of federal gas tax contributions, which we have been able to reallocate to this project. Since the last presentation, we've been successful at receiving $750,000 grant to help with the upgrades at the event center. And then some other town reserves, we have increased the funding since the last plan, but that is due to some of the surplus that we've experienced in 2020, in the year 2020, and we expect to experience in the year 2021 that we've reallocated to this project to help with some of the additional costing pressures that we've been experiencing. So that gets us to the $35 million of funding to fund the projected expenditures. I'd be happy to answer any questions should council have any.
Well, I don't think there's any questions. Who wants to approve it? Councillor Reno.
Thank you, Your Worship. If I could have administration go back to the full build-out picture, please. The chessboard. So just a couple questions. Peter, originally, we were looking at the Ulster Street extension. Actually, the chessboard's fine. Originally, we were looking at the Ulster Street extension to run into the parking lot, I believe, for the new boat ramp. So my question is, I see there's not any color at the end of Ulster Street there. So I'm wondering what is the intention, and is that extension even necessary now?
Just trying to find, I changed my screen around so I could see all counts, but I lost my mute and unmute button. Yes, again, what we do want to do is provide an opportunity to some of the previous discussions that we had with the neighboring landowner for some of the land exchanges that we had with the neighboring owner to the north. So certainly we did say as part of the land exchange that that was going to be a public open road extending west of Front Road. So we still want to honor that discussion in this location. Certainly, that is an option that we will review as we get further into some of the changes into the future of, does Ulster make sense to be the in and out from this location, or does Beaufort make sense to be the in and out from this location? We will explore that. Again, if Beaufort remains, it is quite low compared to what the neighboring parking lots are going to be. So even if Beaufort stays the in and out, it will be a significant issue relative to a grade. So we probably have to rebuild Beaufort anyways. Certainly what we have been working towards is keeping the Ulster Street extension in, because trying to get buses in and circulated around the site becomes problematic. And certainly what we're trying to do is create a movement of traffic relative for buses to come in and out of the site. And that's really why we have that Ulster Street extension, and they come in through the parking lot and move around to drop people off at both the event center and eventually to drop people off at the Benoit House to get people off of Front Road. So certainly we will revisit that as we get closer. But those are kind of some of the preliminary discussions. We'll show it as part of the full year build out now, but certainly that can be revisited as we get into some of those areas.
Okay, so in the chessboard here, does that yellow line coming from Adam Plain, does that represent an entire road all the way to Ulster?
No, sorry, the yellow lines represent trail connections. So what you see as gray lines, all of these yellow lines crisscrossing through here will be trail connections. Really, the gray was meant to represent the asphalt areas where traffic would be. This piece up to this location should probably have been gray, but certainly, there I go. I'm starting to ruin the chessboard here. But certainly this piece will be road, and certainly there'll be some trail connections along the side of the road and things of that nature. But that's really the next steps of should council approve this plan. We will work with the consultant to really refine this and give a picture that's a little bit more easily and readily understandable.
Okay, very good. And I just wanted to thank administration for prioritizing the water and skate feature. We all understand that things are going up significantly in cost, and it was already mentioned that the biggest public support for this project seems to center around not only the event center, but that skate and water feature. So thank you for prioritizing that. The Benoit House will have its day in the sun, but I think a lot of people are more appreciative of this. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Reno. Councillor Carrick.
I'll be quick. Similar to what Councillor Reno just said, that I'm okay with that, and I think we can't go too fast. I mean, everything's terribly expensive. I think as we're building this out, I think you guys we're doing it the right way, and what you're presenting is very feasible. And I like the idea we can leave the boat launch parking lot there as long as we can, and I have no problem with that whatsoever. The commercial, I'll wait to see how that plays out. But again, the skate water feature was the a major component to that. And it's unfortunate that we couldn't go back up along the side. But I think as people drive by and be able to see that on there, hopefully it doesn't cause any accidents from all the rubbernecking. But having said that, I think that's a great feature. And again, the Benoit House, you know what, we'll take care of it, make sure it doesn't fall to pieces. There's not too much in there that we have to do. Just take some time and we can stretch this out. This is a long-term plan. I want my grandkids to enjoy it. I want to get there too, but at the same time, we have to be very cognizant of the monies, and I appreciate that. And I like this outlay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carrick. We have Councillor Desjardins.
Thank you. Through you to Peter. I like the new changes. I think they're good. We are going to make a lot of people very happy leaving the boat launch in the parking where it is, because there was so much conversation, as you know, about, if it's not broke, why fix it? So I'm happy to see that. I like the idea of the extra commercial and possibly community center along Adams Lane. I think that's a really good spot for it. And the neighbors might appreciate more commercial in there than they would tennis courts and volleyball and basketball and the noise that goes with it. So I think the changes are really good. Where we have the festival lawn, what kind of fill are we going to need in there? Like, I'm thinking especially towards the west end at the river. Is that going to be heavy duty to fill that in?
There is, thank you. There is a lot of fill that has to go in there.
Yeah.
There is some new soils regulations out as it sits today. So the town going into the future with all of our construction projects, whether it's a water main replacement, a road reconstruction, if the town is the owner of the property, there is some pretty significant regulations that makes the generator of the material responsible for where it goes. So if we don't provide a disposal site, we are then become responsible for any site that a contractor brings us to. But because we have disposal sites now available, it is going to allow us to, again, when we get into the storm drainage component and constructing that storm sewer in this area and digging out that stormwater management pond, it will provide us an opportunity for disposal fill. There's probably about 3 feet worth of material to go in there. Again, by the time we generate that amount of fill, it's going to be some years away. And so it doesn't need anything significant. Again, we're talking about once we fill it up to a certain point, there will be some compaction effort. I don't think we need anything heavy duty. Similarly now, when we talk about if the carnival gets set up in there, where it currently sits today, when it's really wet, it kind of sinks and they have problems in that area. I think regardless of what we do, unless we put reinforced turf, we're probably still always going to experience that type of consideration. But as we get into finalizing some of that stuff, we will work on with Ms. Fanero's group and work out what a strawberry festival will look like and setup of rides and components, and see what we can do relative to stabilizing that top 2 to 3 feet of earth so that it will allow us to have rides set up and things of that nature where we're not going to have problematic situations. But there are methods that we can look at for that top 2 foot to 1 to 2 feet of earth in this fill to provide some reinforcement there to allow us to kind of bridge some of that. But from the aspect of building roads and parking lots in a building, it's going to be problematic. But from a temporary support for rides and things of that nature, I think that's doable with respect to what's out there, provided that we don't have real saturated conditions. Regardless of real saturated conditions, I think we are going to run into problems regardless of where we are with some of that stuff.
Oh, for sure. And supplemental to that, the Benoit House, I'm not surprised that it's creating issues. I'm very familiar with the house out at the Park Homestead and what we've run into out there. So with the Benoit House, when you do the outside, I assume you're sandblasting the brick to clean it?
We haven't got into that detail, but there will have to be some brick restoration again as there's some of the facade that needs to be removed because it's not original, and try to get it up to original. So there will be some either sandblasting, repointing, any of that type of stuff. We haven't really got to those details just yet, but certainly as we get into that, The architects involved, JP Thompsons, are well familiar with restoring these types of buildings. So we will be exploring what is required with respect to that from the architects.
Okay, thank you. I'll just kind of keep an eye on it and see where we go. Thank you for your answers and for the new plans. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor Desjardins. Now, Councillor Didio Spagnolo.
Thank you. Through you to Mr. Mara. I'm very satisfied with your new designs and plans. I think it just works. I think it looks good, and I think the boat launch to keep it there is a great move. I also am very, very pleased with keeping the water and ice park area the same, and that you're keeping that as a priority, which I'm happy about. One question I do have is the commercial space that you did add. Do you know how many spaces there will be? I've had a lot of messages from business owners and people who want to come to LaSalle and want to wait for the waterfront area. So it's just something that I would like to give some feedback to them as well.
Certainly, thank you. I don't have that information as it sits today. Again, these were boxes drawn in the Microsoft Word program. So certainly they're not really to scale, but as we entertain updating this through JP Thompson, we'll start to pinpoint what kind of size of buildings we have and units and things of that nature, so that, you know, we'll try to put something more specific to the commercial side of things so that we can start to provide a bit of that background information to those who may be interested in exploring opportunities and partnerships with the town on that area. So certainly we'll ensure that information starts to get relayed on to some of the plans.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I'm just going to make a comment here before we move on, that it is a 5-year plan. And the good part about that is I've met with our local MP. He's toured the fish facility in partnership with the University of Windsor and the Benoit House, and he was thoroughly impressed. We're hoping there may be some grants that we become eligible for. So, you know, we're budgeting that we're, as proposed by our Director of Finance, Mr. Langlois, but we may get some surprises along the way. So by spreading it out over a time period, we will be applying for grants every year, twice a year, whenever anything becomes available. So that could help us in that direction, but that is an unknown. Mr. Mara, I think you have something to add.
Oh, yes, sorry, I do have something to add. So that's kind of the aspect of the report before you in the 3 recommendations. One of the final items that I would like to bring up with council's indulgence is at last night's council meeting, we were looking at engaging Miller Solani for 3 proposals that were before council at that point. Mr. Miller has been intimately involved with the renovations of the event center. So what we were looking at, one of those proposals is basically an ad hoc service through Miller Solani to keep Mr. Miller engaged in the completion of the event center. From a consistency standpoint, he's been involved with the contractor, with change orders and payment certificates, and certainly his main point of contact for the town will be myself. I will be taking over the project, but for consistency standpoint, what we were looking at doing is engaging Miller Solani to keep Mr. Miller engaged in this particular project. It'll be as needed basis, attending meetings, reviewing documents, payment certificates, and then making those recommendations back to the town. That was one of the 3 proposals, and there was no set fee on it. It was really as an ad needed basis, and I would explore the option with council through your indulgence, Mr. Mayor, what the council may wish to proceed with that. Certainly, it will provide some real smooth transition relative to what has occurred out there to date, in keeping that consistent with what the information has transpired for the last few months with respect to construction, and certainly see it to the end of construction and taking over taking it over from an occupancy standpoint. Once the construction's done, then we would take it over from that standpoint. But certainly through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't know if there's an opportunity to have that discussion, or through the indulgence of council, if we can explore that opportunity.
Council questions? Councillor Reno, and then Councillor Carrick.
Just my question is to the clerk, considering that we turned down the recommendation last night, can this be discussed again with the engagement of Miller Solani?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there was actually no motion that was brought forward to council. There was never a seconder, so there is nothing procedurally from a motion perspective preventing council from having this discussion.
Okay, thank you. And my second question, much like last night, the funding for that, is that going to come out of this project? Is that going to come from payroll? Where does that come from?
Dale, your mic's off.
Sorry, pressed the wrong button. This funding would come out of this project. There's a category for engineering consultants and contingency related to the waterfront. So that's where this type of funding would come from. Just also on that, I know there's a big concern on the procurement policy that falls under myself. I was responsible for writing the policy. And basically, once you get over $100,000 a contract, that's when you have to consider a competitive process. Also, once you are over $100,000, you do not have to go forward with a competitive process if you can justify savings, duplications of efforts and whatnot. In this instance, there would be a significant duplication of efforts if a different consultant was hired. For example, Mr. Mara, with taking over the project, the consultant not having any experience would come into this project blind. The resources and time that would have to be allocated to educate them and bring them up to speed would be extremely expensive. So it does tick two of the boxes. It does not exceed the $100,000 limit, and the efficiencies created from sole sourcing can definitely be justified and fall within all legal requirements as part of the procurement process, which our policy does meet. But I would be happy to answer any other questions that council might have.
Mr. Militia.
Again, just in conferring with the Director of Council Services here, I just perhaps, again, if we can deal with the report that's on the agenda today, and with council's indulgence, we'll bring back a separate report at the first meeting in January, dealing with just the ad hoc services. We don't expect this to be a large impact to us in terms of the dollar figure. And we expect that to wane over time in terms of, the amount of time spent in January would be much less than what would be spent in May. However, if we can with council's agreement, if we can bring this back, just that section of the recommendation from yesterday's report back in January, we can then place it on a public meeting and deal with it appropriately at that point. So if that's okay and agreeable to council, we will do that and move forward in that fashion.
Council's pleasure. You okay with that? Bringing it back in a January meeting, it'll be listed on the agenda. This was, I think, an add-on because they thought maybe it was going to be okay yesterday and wanted to discuss it today. Okay, so we'll deal with the recommendations. Oh, sorry, are there any other questions to Mr. Mara for the waterfront? Councilor Reno.
Just one teeny tiny thing. Peter, there was parking suggested behind the boat ramp. I had of all the proponents that wanted to keep the launch where it is, it seemed like the only concern they had was more parking. So I mean, it's nice to see that parking lot there. I know that it will probably be for the commercial spot across the street as well. My question is, can there be some kind of hybrid lines put in there so that in the heavy fishing seasons it might be used for overflow? What are your thoughts on that?
Thank you. We will certainly look at what we can do on how we can design this parking lot to be a bit of a hybrid parking lot. What we don't want to do is cause confusion where we really need the location for boats and people are just parking individual cars and taking up those spots. And so certainly we will have to kind of look at that. There may be some time windows in there where we say, you know, parking for boats only between certain months. And beyond that, again, right now, if somebody parked in that parking lot, it really doesn't matter because we don't have very many people launching boats. So we'll look at how we can design that parking lot. Certainly, it's a very good suggestion, and we'll see what the opportunities might be in that area.
Any other council questions to Mr. Mara? Seeing none, we have basically three recommendations: that the report for the Petite Côte waterfront redevelopment project updated modifications be received, that council support the new full build out vision, and council authorize administration to work on finalizing the concept with JP Thompson, and that council approve the new 5-year 2021 to 2025 build plan phase. Moved by Councillor Carrick, support by Councillor Desjardins. All in favor on all three. That carries unanimously. Thank you. And now we have Mr. Mara for the Malden Road. Oh, maybe why don't we take a 5-minute break and then we'll be right back. Thank you. Okay. We're ready to resume. Pardon? Mr. Mara.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So my final report on the agenda tonight is, or today is regarding the Malden Road improvements. It's important to note that this report that I'm presenting today does not change and or advance anything on Malden Road. It is really informational purposes to give council an understanding and expectation of what is involved bringing this to the next phases and into construction and ultimately completion. And so this report is really provided for informational purposes. And again, the recommendation is that council just receive this report. It does not change or modify anything with respect to the Malden Road EA. So as council is aware, again, the Malden Road environmental assessment, it was completed and council adopted approval in principle on September 28th, the environmental assessment. With that recommendation from September 28th, that triggered the issuance of the notice of study completion as the formal process for the environmental assessment. As part of the notice of study completion, it was issued on October 14th. And what that notice of study completion has done was opened up the mandatory 30-day review period. During the 30-day review period from October 14th to November 15th, there were a number of concerns and comments and issues that were submitted to the town. Subsequently to all of those submissions to the town that were directed through myself, I have provided responses to all of them. During that 30-day review period, there are 2 responses that were submitted. One to the town of LaSalle from one resident who was represented by Mr. Ayatona. One submission was submitted to the town, and there was another submission submitted to the Ministry of the Environment from the same representative. So certainly, with respect to the item that was submitted to the Ministry of the Environment, the town is continuing to work with the Ministry of Environment, and we await the ministry's response to that submission. Upon that final submission from the Ministry of the Environment, the town will formalize and finalize our response to the resident through the aspects of what was submitted. So certainly I will circle back to this because this is important to note, because the written submission that was submitted as part of this report really deals with that context. It does not deal with the contents of the report. It deals with the formalities of the environmental assessment, but we're not, again, as I had noted, this does not change the environmental assessment, and it's not intended to, and it's really just meant to provide council with an understanding, an expectation of timelines with respect to Malden Road. So as I had noted previously, Malden Road is a significant project for the town. It is significant from a number of aspects, from a financial impact perspective and from a project size perspective. So certainly what we have done as part of looking at the implementation and improvements to Malden Road is we have really broken any proposed improvements. What we are proposing as part of this is to break it up into 2 phases. So phase 1 will be all work from Normandy up to including the Ream intersection. We expect that to take anywhere from 3 to 5 years for completion. And then the second phase, which is basically from that location southerly to Megan, that phase is what we would consider phase 2. And certainly there is some significant needs in that area, but it's really driven by growth. And most of that growth will occur in the Howard Bouffard area. And certainly as council is aware, there's some drainage struggles in the Howard Bouffard area. So until we can solve some of those drainage struggles, we don't foresee any of that need and demand from a growth perspective for the improvements south of Ream for anywhere from 6 to 12 years. Again, it's highly dependent on growth. And so certainly it's going to be highly dependent on growth in certainly the housing market. But certainly what we brought forward today as part of this report is just an understanding for council to see what is involved with respect to a project of this scope. So as I noted, phase one is from Normandy southerly up to and including a new Ream intersection. So certainly our first step with respect to bringing this to fruition is carrying out the detailed design. That has been budgeted for already. So when council, when the town is ready and the EA is finalized, certainly we will advance the detailed design. We expect the detailed design, and again, we can't start that detailed design until we know the EA is finalized and any orders against the town from the Ministry of the Environment, if there is any, are not present and or cleared, and then it would be considered that the EA is final at that point. So certainly that's what we're waiting for with respect to the ministry's response. So certainly once that is all received and we know the EA is finalized, like I had mentioned, we'll start the detailed design. We expect detailed design to occur over a period of 8 to 12 months. Following detailed design, it really is important for us to work on that first to really identify what the property requirements are. So as council is aware, property is certainly required along the entire stretch. Through the detailed design, we start to really refine what those property requirements are at each individual property, whether it's 3.1 meters or 3.2 meters or 4 meters, we really start to refine that. So certainly that's really where the rubber hits the road, no pun intended, sorry. But certainly we really start to get a refinement of what each individual property requires. Once we get to that point, certainly we have to circle back to council to proceed to property purchases. So certainly through this discussion, when we get to that stage, should council wish to continue to proceed with property purchases and continue on with Malden Road improvements, council ultimately has to give authorization to proceed with property purchases. Now, whether that's through negotiations or expropriation, there is a certain amount of time to really deal with that. And certainly it's subject to future council approval. And certainly we expect about 6 months worth of time to securing properties. By the time we deal with each individual property owner along the way, prepare surveys, do all the legal requirements and things of that nature, it will be a significant effort to get through property purchases. Once that is through and secured and the property is in the town's name, one major step that we have is utility relocations. There's a number of hydro poles that Hydro One owns within the corridor that need to be relocated to accommodate intersections. And more of a significant nature is Enbridge has indicated that they want to replace their gas main all the way through this corridor before any of the road work starts. Their current main is of a vintage that they see that the road's going to be improved, so they would like to get their main replaced and renewed so that they don't have to come in later on and dig up a new road. So certainly that is supported from the town standpoint. This advanced utility relocation certainly will take a period of time. So we expect another 6 to 8 months beyond property purchases. And once the property is secured, for some of this advanced utility relocations to occur. Once those utilities are all relocated within the phase one is really then when we can really start and tender the construction work. And again, we would go through that process through a tendering process with a set of drawings for a contractor. And we suspect that we can do the construction between Normandy and certainly Ream in about 8 to 10 months. It's going to be a major disruption to Malden Road. It will be a project similar to what you see throughout the city of Windsor. Cabana Road, for example, went from 2 lanes to 4 lanes. There's going to be a period of time where there's going to be some major disruptions. But certainly once it's completed and improved, that will be kind of the aspects of what you could expect through this location. So in all, phase one, basically from Ream, including the Ream intersection up to and including Normandy, we suspect to occur over the next 3 to 5 years. And of course, council has to be engaged in and approve some of the major steps, such as property, such as tender award. And certainly we will continue to bring council up to speed on the steps as we progress through them. As I noted, phase two would be anything south of Ream Road. And it's really going to be development driven, growth driven, and certainly at the current rate of what we are seeing today, we expect that, again, it's a best guess at this point, 6 to 12 years. It could be beyond 12 years. Again, it's really growth related, housing market demand, and that's really when that section of road really experiences some significant pressures. The reason why we want to advance phase one, in the report, you can see some of the traffic analysis that was done and some of the existing demands. So Malden Road is under pressure, basically at Ream Road, north and northerly from there up to the town center. So that's why we bring forward phase one in the next 3 to 5 years and really delay the phase two portion of it. As I noted, property requirements, certainly council is going to be involved with respect to all phases of property purchases and approving the next steps of property. So with that, it's kind of a bit of a summary. So the recommendation is for council just to receive this report for informational purposes. Certainly, there is a financial section within this report. So I've provided a bit of summary with respect to a breakdown of overall cost for phase one and for phase two. So overall, phase one, from a construction standpoint, we expect it to be about $11.5 million. We expect property purchase within the phase one corridor area to be anywhere from $2 to $3 million. So in total, we're looking up to a maximum of about $14 to $15 million in total for phase one. Phase two, the construction component for the phase two portion, as outlined in the report, is about $9.5 million. And property purchase for the phase two has a bigger range of difference between $4 to $6 million. The reason being is everything north of Ream, there's a number of commercial properties and a number of redevelopments that have occurred already where the town has secured enough of that property. So that we don't actually have to purchase some of the property in the phase one area because the town has secured some of that property through some redevelopments and some new houses and things of that nature. So there's less, there's a little bit less to purchase in the phase one area. Anything south of Ream, it's really still the existing houses and homesteads in that area that have not went for redevelopment purposes, and certainly there's going to be a need to purchasing that property. From a funding standpoint, this project is going to be funded from a number of sources, and certainly as we get into budgeting for future years, you'll start to see larger holes being built in some of the future year budgets. You see some of the holes starting to be built today in the budget that was approved today. There was $1 million from previous years that has went up to $2.5 million. So again, we continue to put some effort into building a bit of a hole in the budget to allow council to proceed with this work. But certainly there's a portion of this that's going to be funded from the county. So once we get through detailed design, we will provide some of that information to the county for their future year budgets. And also there's a DC component as well that will be funding part of this project. So that's the completion of my report. So certainly there was a written submission from Mr. Ayatona on behalf of Mr. Pazzulli. And certainly it refers to what was submitted to the town. And there is no intention of hiding anything because, again, the petition was submitted as part of the town's, as part of what they submitted to the town as part of their comments. So we do need to formally respond back to Mr. Pazzulli and Mr. Ayatona. And when we do so, we will advise them on how the petition will be dealt with. But since it has been submitted, what the petition is actually asking is for council to go back to their previous decision, the September 28th decision, and rescind that decision. By rescinding that decision, it basically puts everything in null and void with respect to Malden Road. So certainly we will have to bring this forward to council. It was something that was going to be brought forward at a future council meeting and still needs to be addressed. But certainly what we are doing is trying to do this in a staged approach. It wasn't meant to provide any direction. Tonight's report was not meant to gain any direction or advance Malden Road. It was really an understanding of trying to provide council with some understanding. And you will note in the report that I do say in the report that The report is prepared with the information that is known today. So certainly if an order comes through from the Ministry of the Environment, if council makes a future decision on doing anything with respect to a petition, it changes the aspect of this report. So certainly what we wanted to do was provide a bit of understanding, put this in front of council so that they can understand the magnitude and scope of the work and go from there. So certainly with that, that's kind of a completion of my presentation. And if council has any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you, Mr. Mara. The recommendation simply states it's regarding the Malden Road improvement update, schedule and timelines be received. We're not okaying the project. So with that, any council questions? Councillor Reno.
Just a comment in regards to the letter that was submitted. I will wait for your formal response before I ask any questions or make any assumptions. I'll wait for the response. I look forward to it. Thank you. I will support the motion to receive.
Moved by Councillor Reno, support Councillor Di Spagnolo. All in favor? That carries, and it's noted that Mr. Carrick has declared a conflict on this. Okay. I believe that, Mr. Militia would like to give some closing remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, we appreciate the patience, certainly the viewing audience and members of council, as well as those members of administration that are online with the call. Certainly, this is another virtual meeting that we've had in our second virtual budget session. I would say that we are getting better at this, despite some of the IT glitches. We are getting better at this, and they are an effective means of communicating on a wide spread basis to members of our community, and also allows for folks that potentially would not normally be able to view afterwards through our YouTube channel in terms of some of the information that we provide and the recommendations coming through the budget. I would like just to identify a couple of things that throughout the budget that I think are important to note. Many of you that have seen the budget for some time now have probably noted that we've got a number of new faces as part of the presentation. So when I looked at kind of did a rough sketch here of who we have, and some of them are new to our organization. Some of them are folks that we are familiar with within our organization that are taking on a different role. But again, when I look at the finance team as well as myself, certainly as well as Mr. Solani, we are longtime budget fans, we'll call it. But we do have a number of new faces. I'd like to congratulate them in terms of their involvement with the budget. It's their first time through for a lot of them, and certainly for some of them, it may be their first time through in this certain position. So certainly, Mr. Mara, we just heard from him in terms of his role as the Deputy CAO, Ms. Astrologo in her role as Director of Council Services and Clerk, Mr. Hyber's role in terms of the Director of Human Resources, Ms. Hadre's role in terms of the Director of Strategy Engagement, Mr. Osborne's role in terms of his involvement as the Director of Public Works, Ms. Funaro in terms of her involvement as the Director of Culture and Rec, and certainly Mr. Thiessen's role as the Fire Chief and CEMC for the organization. I would also be remiss if I did not recognize Mr. Duncan Davies as well in terms of his role as Police Chief. So we have had a lot of changes at the senior management team in 2021. Again, it's nice to see. I would also say that earlier today we did announce that we have filled the soon-to-be retired position of Director of Planning and Development with Ms. Gudrun Beggs. Will be joining us in January. So we look forward to that and having a complete roster at our senior management side. I will also say, as part of the reorganization that we've done, again, a lot of these promotional opportunities have presented themselves, but we have also developed a few areas of more intense focus. So certainly, again, the role of the Deputy CAO is a full-time role and is new to our organization and is taking on a different aspect and a different area of focus. as well as the Director of Human Resources. Again, a familiar face in that role, but it's certainly a more intense look in an area of focus when it comes to the human resources policy development that we have here at the town of LaSalle. Also, again, Ms. Hodre is taking on a completely new role in terms of the Director of Strategy Engagement. We've taken a few areas and reorganized them and created this new portfolio. So this is a new area that we look forward to seeing blossom as we go through 2022 and beyond. And so again, we some exciting times, I will say, and it's good to be part of the team these days. Unfortunately, it feels really old for me, as apparently I'm the old guy now, and that is not a familiar role for me. But certainly, it is interesting, and it's a pleasure to lead this team, the senior management team, as we go forward. I will also say congratulations to all those involved, certainly throughout the presentation in terms of their roles, as well as the finance team led by Mr. Langlois and Mr. Ferraro, being our Director of Finance and Manager of Finance. We again have come forward with a successful budget, which is always a positive thing. We've done, I think, an admirable job of balancing the needs that we have, moving forward with a number of initiatives, and as well as keeping a financial check to make sure that that we are not pricing ourselves out of the market nor causing undue hardship. Quite frankly, no one likes to see tax increases, but they are a necessary evil to enhance the services and maintain the services that we have. Lastly, I'll just note that we have had a successful budget session, and we're very happy about that. We also have identified a number of items that we do have our eye on as time goes on. Certainly, as part of yesterday's council meeting, and as well as some commentary today, certainly the changes in the assessment model with the delays, or the deferral, I should say, with the reassessment from MPAC. Once that comes back online in whatever shape that might be, was certainly something we will have to consider as we go forward, because our area in particular, if you look from the 2016 reassessment date to now, there's been a significant change in the valuation of a lot of the homes that we have here in LaSalle. So that is something we certainly have our eye on. Certainly the other items is certainly the inflationary levels. Mayor Bondi had received some indication earlier in the meeting that the November number for inflation is at 4.7%, which is quite unusual for what we're used to, certainly over the last decade and a half. So that is something that is going to affect our operations, and certainly something we'll have to keep an eye on as we go forward. As well, we've got a number of projects, as we've identified, a number of areas where there has been a demand from the public and brought through council in terms of increases in service levels that all have an upward pressure on the budget. We will do our best, as always, to control those upward pressures and come forward with budgets that are reasonable, given the levels that we certainly are trying to provide to the public and that they are demanding. But I will say that we are at a point now where the budget cannot withstand much more upward pressure without having some upward pressure on the tax rate. So those are issues that we have to deal with in 2020 as part of the 23 budget and beyond. But again, those are topics for another day. For now, I think again, the proposed budget that was approved in principle today, we're very happy to see, and certainly will continue to provide the services that the community is looking for. So again, thanks to all. Thanks for the indulgence and the patience. I know it's been a long day, and it is an extremely long day when we're online from 9:30 till now, but we do appreciate it, and we're happy to finish this process and start to roll forward as we move forward with 2022. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I'll just turn that over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Militia. As he was speaking, I'm thinking, he's saying this, yet most of the municipality would think, I didn't know that. So when you think about, we went through COVID, or we're still going through COVID, with all these changes in the administrative leadership team, and it was seamless. We had no bumps in the road. minor things possibly, but I give kudos to Joe and his team and to Chief Davies and police. They were short 4 this year and they went through it. I don't think the municipality noticed anything. We're making changes here at a high level. Municipality just goes along. The residents, I think, I don't want to say they assume anything, but things are just going tickety-poo. And I sit here and go, you're right. We've gone through a lot and we're doing great. We added Miss Astrologo to the team and things just kept going, as well as others. You said Mrs. Beggs now is as of the new year. So kudos to Joe and his team for going through this seamlessly. I have to mention, obviously, Tano and Dale, another good job. When I started, I think it was almost 3 days of this. And now it's half a day on budget. And then we did this afternoon in the new plans going forward. Tremendous job. You put out the budget to administration and council, they review it, especially the award-winning graphics. It's so easy to go through it. You go through it and go, wow, this is easy. The old one was you'd flip a page. Awesome. Just a great job. I'm proud to be the mayor of this group. I really am. And I'm sure council would say the same thing. So on that, we have a bylaw 8655 to approve. I won't read the whole. Okay, we're not doing the bylaw, we're just doing the confirmatory bylaw on the bylaw 8655 and the 8656. Okay, so council on 8656 was the confirmatory bylaw, all 3 readings. Councillor Reno and Councillor Carrick, all in favor. That carries. Well, there's the moment you've been waiting for. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you all. Good questions, good comments. It's a nice dialogue when we're dealing with $40 million. Boy, it didn't take long to okay that, did it? Good night, everyone. Stay safe. Have a great Christmas, and we'll see you